Okay, so I'll start. My name is Sukli Liu. I just go by Lee. I'm an associate professor at the University of Southern California, and I study stroke rehabilitation, especially like big data approaches and neuroinformatics for stroke. And I learned how to program when I first joined a research lab. It was when I was doing my master's program in occupational therapy. I joined a research lab because I thought maybe I wanted to do research instead. And I had never programmed before at all. And they did fMRI research. And so they gave me a few scripts and some MATLAB code and told me to try to work it out. So I spent a lot of time Googling things, using Stack Overflow, and like just debugging 5 million things all the time. And the most frustrating thing for me, I think, is that sometimes I would spend like 3 days trying to figure something out with Google. And then I would ask a lab mate finally, and they would say, oh, you just need a semicolon there. And that's what it was. So I think to me, the biggest part of programming is just learning what the debug, like the error messages actually mean and how to be a more efficient Googler. So that's my experience with programming. Grace, do you want to go next?
Yes, hello everyone. I'm Grace. I was in OT school at USC, which is kind of how I got involved with Lee's lab, and I'm program manager this year for ReproRehab. And I'm currently taking a break from school, actually trying to figure out my life, a little bit of a quarter life crisis. But I'm still super excited to be involved with ReproRehab and with Lee's lab. And I kind of have a little bit of programming experience from undergrad at UCLA. So I took some just basic coding classes in a couple different languages because it was a part of my major requirements. Yeah, I think that's it. Keith, do you want to go next?
Yes, I'm Keith Lose. I'm associate professor at Washington University School of Medicine and Physical Therapy and Neurology. And my background is kind of in research methodology, starting in psychology, but then kind of moving into rehabilitation science. And learning to program for me started with learning to program for statistics, because when I got to grad school, I was told I was going to be a TA for the undergraduate stats course, and it was in SAS. And so I had to learn how to program in SAS. And then my second year of grad school, I was told it was in R. And so I had to learn how to do like the undergraduate lab assignments in R. And I basically started learning R and how to use R in my own research after that, which makes it sound like, I think, a cleaner trajectory than it was, because like I really kind of resisted a lot of programming for a long time because I already knew how to do things in like Excel or SPSS. So it was much faster early on than the hours I would have to spend learning how to do it in a new way. And even now, like I'm a very fluent R programmer and I'm a capable Python programmer. But I first started being told to learn how to program in Python in 2007. And it wasn't probably until 2017 that I actually really did any programming in Python, because I would try to do it and it just never worked. And it was a really frustrating, terrible experience most of the time. But now I can comfortably say there are some things I can do in Python, and it's pretty great. Do I need to tag the next person?
Yeah, you get to tag the next person.
Oh, sorry, James.
Hi, everyone. James Finley. I'm an associate professor in the Division of Biokinesiology and Physical Therapy at USC. I also have appointments in biomedical engineering and the neuroscience graduate program. And then here at USC, I also direct the locomotor control lab. So my research is really focused on what we refer to as the neuromechanics of walking. So this intersection between neural control, biomechanics, and then how that relates to or influences learning and recovery from neurological injury. So my training is in engineering, so both mechanical and biomedical engineering. Contrary to popular belief, I never actually had a formal programming course through any of my years of engineering. And like most people I know who learn to program as engineers, you basically have some class, either for me, it was my junior year, where the professor says, okay, solve these problems using MATLAB. And so that's basically it. and you spend that semester, I don't know if we were Googling then. I don't know what we were using to find information, but you basically figure it out with your classmates or whatever online search method. So it's a lot of trial and error. And then you do that for years. And I think that's the key thing to keep in mind is that you don't learn how to program in a semester. You don't, even though we're doing a boot camp and a course here, you will learn some things about programming over this year, but it's important to just continue learning. I teach programming and I learned something new last week. So I'll stop there. Dave.
Hi, Dave Kennedy. I'm a professor of radiology and psychiatry at the University of Massachusetts Chan Medical School. I guess I described my job in 3 phases. Phase 1, by day, I work in a child developmental lab where we do neuroimaging in various developmental disabilities from birth on to older age. By mid-afternoon, I work with NITRIC, the Neuroimaging Informatics Tools and Resources Clearinghouse, a resource that is a clearinghouse of all the different tools and resources for data and processing in the neuroimaging community. And then by night, I run something called ReproNIM, Center for Reproducible Neuroimaging Computation, which of course is where Lee and the rest of us got hooked up together. And that this course is a grandchild of that initiative. In terms of learning to program, I'm so old. There were no classes in programming when I needed, when I was a junior in undergraduate. There was a informal Fortran 77 thing I could take. Then when I got to graduate school and MRI was just being invented and brand new, there was no software for doing MRI analysis. So we learned how to program by trial and error. And with lots of print statements and debugging by hand, because debuggers didn't exist back then either. So I learned Fortran, so I still think in Fortran. And then anything else, I just convert from Fortran to C, to C++, to Python, to C, to R, to anything else as needed. JP.
Sorry, you might have some background noise, so let me know if that's really awful or not, or if I can be heard reasonably well. Yeah? Okay, great. So I'm associate professor at McGill at the MNI, the Montreal Neurological Institute. I work on trying to help or abuse the devs reproducibility mission in neuroimaging. I'm also embarked in a various number of projects to build infrastructures, such data sharing, such computing aspects. So I've worked on the Canadian Open Neuroscience platform, which has a bunch of data sets and link to computing resources. I also worked on more like a medical-centric thing called ReproRehab, which is also trying to help researchers from the neuro and neuroscience in general to both share and collaborate on data, as well as launch processing and reuse process data, which I've worked on trying to process the UK Biobank, for instance, and those things. In terms of I'm very much involved in trying to establish standards. So one of the big success in our community of neuroimaging was the brain imaging data standards. I think that establishing standards is so important for efficiency and making sure that we are we have like a better way of processing and less mistakes being done and all those things. And for that, I work with the INCF, which is the International Neuroinformatic Coordinating Facility, and that is a little organization that tries to establish and vet standards in neuroimaging and neuroscience. And in terms of programming, I'm not too sure what were the questions. But,
the question is, how did you first learn how to program?
Oh, yeah, first learn how to program. So happen to have engineering background, so I learned at school. I'm old enough that I think I learned, things like C, some assembly programs, some assembly things, and but also like fancy things at the time, which have disappeared, like Prolog or things like that. And then, but I really learned a bit of doing my PhD. I've been doing mostly with C, but also when I went to London for the postdoc, I learned MATLAB. And then, a few years after that, Python was getting the newest kid on the block, and so I pushed Python usage. I was actually it's a funny story, but maybe for another time. But the kind of early adoption Python things was happening when numerics and NumPy, the old NumPy, was merged, and that was that meeting at Berkeley that happened where I was happened to be there. So there's yeah, there was since then I'm pushing Python, but I know that at some stage maybe other things will come up. I'm very bad at R. I kind of sometimes have to use R, but I'm so bad at it. I just and then also I tend to have less time for programming. I really hope that sabbatical sometimes like I will go back to more useful things that the kids have do now. Yeah, that's me in a nutshell.
Awesome. Thanks, JB. I'll call in the next person for you since we don't know who's gone or not yet. So Allison.
Yep. Hi, everybody. My name is Allison. I am a physical therapist by background, and I'm a postdoctoral researcher at the University School of Medicine in St. Louis. And I'm really interested in exploring how we can use wearable sensor technology to improve clinical decision-making and outcomes of patients who seek these services. I learned how to program. I had some kind of coursework that I took as a PhD student, but I had actually practiced for several years as a clinician before going for my PhD. And I remember my first week of PhD training, sitting in a LabVIEW class, and halfway through the class, everyone took a break and I tried to leave because I was just like, no, I'm not, I don't want to do this. And the professor kindly told me that this is a useful skill and to sit back down. And so I took some coursework, but I think I really learned how to program sort of a little bit on my own and in collaboration with some of the other PhD students that were going through the program at the same time as me. For one of my dissertation aims, I was really interested in looking at variables that weren't readily computed by the sensor that I was working with. And so I really had to kind of figure out how to compute these things on lots of data. So I learned a lot from kind of spending a lot of time on Stack Overflow, as others have said, and really teaching myself. And I'm definitely still continuing to learn. And I'm really glad that I stuck with it because it's been such a useful skill. And I was also somebody that kind of operated under the fallacy that everyone around me who knew how to code just had, it came naturally and they had all these great skills that I, couldn't, attain. And that is absolutely, what I've learned is that is absolutely not the case. Everybody starts somewhere. So you can definitely do it.
Do you want to pick the next person?
Yes, I will go with Andrew.
Hello, everyone. My name is Andrew. I am a postdoc at Arizona State University. My area of study is in using digital technology to help better detect kind of differential diagnosis and neurodegenerative disease. I first learned to program during my PhD, and it was not any by formal means necessary. It was just given MATLAB. Thankfully, Stack Overflow was created at that time, so I could get yelled at by a lot of very more experienced people than myself on where to put semicolons and how to do indexing and things like that. So that was fun. And then progressed to being able to just learn more and more. Thankfully, I received my PhD at USC, so there's actually a lot of very skilled people who have offered a lot of special topics courses that allowed for a more kind of structured introduction to R and MATLAB and other types of languages like that. And then as part of my research, I was able to really use a lot of just the internet to be able to learn languages such as C# and JavaScript to be able to create a lot of digital applications. And so I've been, I think I've had great timing to be able to have so many resources to learn coding now, both as an individual and in collaboration with people. So yeah, that's me in a nutshell. And then I'll go with Jinsuk.
Hi everyone, this is Jinsuk Oh. I go by Jin in the US. What do I do? I'm a postdoc at Children's Hospital, Los Angeles. I am particularly working at infant neuromotor control lab, studying spontaneous leg movements of infants, either typically developing or having developmental disabilities, using wearable sensors as well. So I get to extract accelerometer / gyroscope data from sensors, get to analyze either raw data or process data. How did I learn to program? I think I was first exposed to different programming languages, including R and MATLAB during my master's program. Unlike some of the other descriptions, people around me who were good at coding gave me this look that made me shudder. Like, oh, so that look was really telling me like, oh, you can't do this. Oh, okay, I see. Like, like you just can't stand that look. So you obviously go and work on coding more so as to not get that look anymore. But anyways, yes. And then I think my programming skill kind of boosted during my PhD when I was assigned to develop a mobile software for some sort of assessment. So like one of my dissertation topics or projects was to test this sense called proprioception and typically developing kits at a safe fair. So I actually had to like bring a tablet or tablets to the fair to test kits. And then the software had to like run on those like typical like over-the-counter tablets. So I developed an software, mobile software, and that really helped me learn programming. So I think if I have a word about programming, I would like to say like make something that you and others can play with so that like you think more about, oh, like what should I think before like making something work? Like that kind of like contemplation thinking a lot helps programming on top of like all those experience of looking at others' responses on Stack Overflow and blah blah blah. Then I can ask Joanna to go next.
Yeah, sure. So my name is Joanna. I am now associated with the Radboud University in Nijmegen, and especially the Donders Institute for Cognitive Neuroscience. And this is a very new affiliation because it's basically 4 days old. I started this week, and before I've been in Melbourne for the last 6 years, where I obtained my PhD finally, and it's finally done. I learned to program. So I come from a psychology background. My bachelor's is in psychology, and the first thing that I had to program was in my master's for my work. Like I did a research master's. It was for a project. We didn't really have to program, but I asked my supervisor to teach me some Python. And what I finally managed to do is like display an image on the screen, and like I remember how much I struggled because it would pop up but then like close, and I didn't realize it was with this old like fopen. Didn't realize that you have to put some timer for how long it should be displayed. And yeah, it was really funny because so I did that, and that was basically the only thing I managed to do. And this supervisor, he reached out to me. He's now in Brisbane, and we didn't have contact for a very long time, but he reached out to me whether I want to do a postdoc with him. So somehow I seem to have impressed him with this very primitive program. Anyway, so also for my master thesis, that was my second contact with more programming in MATLAB. And I remember I cried over Christmas because I thought I would not be able to do the programming for my master thesis. Like it ruined one of my Christmases. Yeah, what else? Yeah, what do I study? So now I'm a postdoc here and I work on normative modeling, a lot of neuroimaging, mapping and prediction in large neuroimaging data sets. And I'm going to maintain the toolbox of the lab, which I'm really excited about. Yeah, that's me. And I'll pass on to Michelle.
Hey, hi everyone. My name is Michelle. I'm entering the second year of my PhD at McMaster University in Canada. For my PhD, I'm going to be studying brain blood flow primarily in women, looking at kind of fluctuating sex hormones, exogenous sex hormones, etc. I got kind of sucked into the world of coding for my master's. So I was expecting to collect human data for my master's. And as we all know, 2020 was not the year for that. So in preparation for my work for my master's, which was using a large aging data set, I took a programming course. I think it was offered online from MIT, and all I took from that was, I think, like how to create a Scrabble-like game on R that I couldn't even tell you what I did for that. And I found that very challenging and very overwhelming for just even learning programming, because at that point I had so little exposure that like I kind of was just copy pasting lines in, and I didn't really understand the logic, and I didn't know how to look up my errors. So after like a lot of hours, similar to everyone else who has gone on Stack Overflow, Googling questions and trying to reword them so that the actual question you wanted to answer actually came up, I'm feeling a little bit more confident in that. I primarily use Python. But basically learning kind of in a dark basement room, and kind of overcoming these challenges myself. I'm really looking forward to going through the process with everyone coming to kind of validate the challenges and make people not feel as overwhelmed and hopeless as I once did. So I guess to finish us off, Tanner.
Yeah, last but certainly least, thanks for having me, everyone. I'm really excited about the program and TAing here. I am a second year PhD student at WashU, studying under Laura McPherson. Broadly speaking, we study the neural control of movement in MS patients. Specifically, it's sort of the end stage of CNS output by way of like looking at motor unit like firing patterns, like populations of motor units and their firing patterns. And I sort of got involved in programming during kind of late undergrad and into my master's, where I was answering similar types of questions that we're looking at now, but in like a much more strength and conditioning type of framework. It was in like an exercise science department where a lot of these like advanced modeling techniques weren't on anyone's like radar. I mean, our analyses were very much like, you know, t-test and ANOVA type stuff and SPSS, call it a day. But I started to kind of branch out after taking a class that we did a little bit of R programming in, and started to use it more and more to do like more advanced statistics for the type of data we handle. Yeah, and I think that kind of speaks a little bit to how I learned to program, and what has been kind of really elegantly put so far by a lot of people is just you just kind of gotta learn by doing. And I think it's important to point out that like getting better at Googling issues is like definitely a skill that takes a little bit of practice to actually like Google the issue and like pinpoint the issue first of all, and like actually Google a specific question to address the problem. So that's kind of a piece of advice I try to give to people, is to learn like how to actually Google the issue that you need to resolve. Yeah.
Awesome. Thank you all so much. I'm hopeful that the introductions kind of help the learners feel a little bit more comfortable, and to know that we were all just like you at one point in time. And I think also just to set the expectation that, you know, learning how to program and applying data science to your research is a lifelong process, and it's constantly evolving. And that our primary goal during the boot camp is for you to, one, not get scared by errors and not let it ruin your life. and two, learn how to Google them effectively. I think that's our goal, so that during the self-guided portion, learners can go on and take that knowledge to start to apply things to their own research, because that's really the main skill that you need. So cool. Thank you, everyone. Okay, so Grace, you will cut the video there. And then I think the rest of it, are there any other questions? I know, Keith, you said you created a conference travel channel in Slack, which is awesome, so people can share and look for rides.
And I invited some people, but I don't really know how Slack works. I think anyone can go in, right? I don't have to actually
Anyone
invite
can
everybody.
go in.
Okay.
Yeah, but maybe
Yeah.
Grace, you could put everyone in there that is coming to the conference, because you know who is coming or not.
Yeah, I can
And
do
we'll also put a note about this Slack channel in our email that will go out with all logistics, so people will know to go to Slack. Okay, cool. Any other questions, JB? Thanks for joining from the airport. It took me a while to understand where you were. I thought you were on an airplane, but then I saw people moving with their baggage and stuff, and I realized.
Oh, yeah, sorry, the security line was so long. I was I planned to be on the call. Yeah.
No worries.
And I'm still on the verge of going to USC as well. But we'll see.
We'll be excited if you could make it.
I know.
Yeah.
So crazy.
Yeah, I know. Okay.
I decided that before the end of the week.
Okay, great, thanks. Okay. Any last thoughts or questions or comments? People feel somewhat prepared for the kickoff and things starting? Yeah.
Very
Okay.
excited. less prepared, but more excited.
Yeah, that's all. You just need blind enthusiasm, really. So, all right, cool. And I'll start populating things on our TA ELT channel also, just to check in and see how people are doing with their pods and stuff. Okay, thanks, everyone.
Thank you.
Okay, bye.
Thanks. Bye.
My name is Duncan. I'm a PhD student at the University of Delaware, and my research focuses on how stroke affects proprioception and also how to train proprioception after stroke. My story of how I got introduced to programming is pretty similar to Maggie's. Kind of came into graduate school with no experience, and then was told, like, yeah, we do a ton of programming, and here's everything. Try to learn it. That didn't go very well, and then I took a couple courses that required programming, and that really forced me to sit down and actually learn it. So that's pretty much how I learned it. And then, of course, a lot of Googling and a lot of internet always helps.
My name is Devin Austin, and I am a fourth-year PhD student at the University of Delaware. My research primarily focuses on studying upper limb impairments in individuals after they have had a stroke. And we primarily do this by developing either a robot or a tablet-based assessment of their reaching movements. I didn't start learning how to program seriously until the first year of my PhD, where I was told to make an Android-based tablet assessment of these reaching movements, but I had no idea where to start. So to teach myself how to learn how to program this game, I chose Java as my programming language, and I started just Googling like crazy, posting questions to Stack Overflow, and watching math videos on YouTube. While the final code for this project wasn't the prettiest or most efficient, I still gained a lot of experience programming that I was able to build on through some of the coursework in my PhD. But the two biggest things that have helped me learn to program was, one, trying to program just a little bit every day. It's a skill you're always going to develop, and the more you do it, the better you get at it. And by working with my peers, talking about their code, my code, why we did what we did, sharing little tips and tricks we've learned throughout our programming journey.